Good morning. It is a good morning, sun shining. So, my first time to the World Dairy Expo, so be good to walk around here this afternoon. I know I get to introduce myself here, but they gave me a little sheet here. But get started here. Welcome you to the 2018 World Dairy Expo. Today's seminar here this morning is going to be, Are You Raising the Right Number of Heifers? And my name is Jason Karszes. I'm with the Pro Dairy program at Cornell. And I'll kind of be going through a number of different things here and answering questions here for the next hour or so on this question. Excited to be out here. So my background here is I work mostly on the financial side of the dairy industry in New York State, mostly out on farms, working with 80 to 100 dairies a year on financial aspects of their dairies. And parts of things we do is what we call our activity analysis projects, where we spend time looking at different things, such as raising heifers or running the parlors or spreading manure or running the feed center, or all these different areas. So over the last 25 years or so, I've been looking at the heifer question and the cost to raise heifers and how the heifer system interacts with the rest of the dairy and all those types of areas. So that's a little bit about my background. So I am housed at Cornell, but most of the time it is out at the kitchen tables at the farms. If you can't tell, usually breakfast at one, lunch at the next, and dinner at the third. So, and they're usually pretty good cooks. So I'm excited to be back out here. And this seminar has been approved for continuing ed credits for those that need those. The American Registry of Professional Animal Science, the American Association of Vet Services, or state boards, and there are forms in the back if you do need them. And they also ask here that have cell phones put on silent if not turned off. So please, nobody call mine and test it. So we'll get started here. About, are we raising the right number of heifers? And it's a very interesting question, and it's certainly come more to the forefront here the last 3, 4, 5 years, maybe a little bit longer than that, with all the improvements in the reproduction programs and the different number of calvings on the farm and different things. Just what are we doing with these animals? What are we doing with them? Where are we going with this? How's it fit? So that's what we'll talk about. Impact of the replacement program is a significant investment on the dairy farm. So in New York, we're right around 7% of the balance sheet assets is the young stock inventory. That's just the animals. So that's not buildings or machinery or any of those things. That's just the animals. Then we can add in those parts. And we're somewheres 14 to 21% of the operating costs to run the dairy is going to take care of the heifers. And that was what we looked at about every 5 years. We try to do a study. I know out here, Wisconsin, and the farm management staff, dairy staff here at Extension in Wisconsin also look at things. But we can compare it back to the farm's total costs, see where they are when we allocate things. And there is a range there. And that's one of the key aspects to this, is there is a range, and why do we have that range? What's that mean for management? So the questions that come up all the time: does the number of heifers impact the costs on the farm? Does the number of heifers impact earnings? So let's look at those two questions. So here's the graph. So again, this is 2012 was the last time we've done the project here in New York. We had 17 farms. And all those farms, we also had full annual financial statements for them, so we knew their total performance of the dairy. And then they looked at their heifer costs. We usually do the project about every 5 years or more, because it takes at least 5 years for the farms to forget how much hard work it was to do it before they'll agree to do it again. But here we got a pretty good relationship in economic terms of an R squared of 0.42. Yes, that's not a controlled animal science nutrition study, R squared. But on our economic side, that's a pretty high R squared. And as our percent heifers to cows, so that's our measure here. As we go up to 100%, 105%, 110% of heifers to cows, my percent of the total expenses going to raise heifers does what? Goes up. Makes sense, shows up in the data. And it's like, boy, if I raise more heifers, I'm going to spend more money doing it. It's going to be a larger expense to run my farm. But the more important question is what? Are we making any money doing this? And that leads us to this graph. So this is coming from 2017, 161 dairies that are in our Dairy Farm Business Summary program. So this is the full financial performance of the farms that volunteer to provide their data to us. And again, we had the percent heifers to cows. And all these farms, traditionally, all these farms are raising all their heifers on farm. very low custom heifer grower use, and very low the heifers are in some other state. Most of the heifers are, you can see them from the kitchen, or we can walk there type things. They're not far away. Very low R squared. Boy, we have very little relationship, essentially none, between percent heifers and cows and rate of return on assets as one of our profit measures in 2017. So we have lots of variation going on dairies, lots of different things. We can break this into quadrants. You see I drew a line there. And that's right at 5% rate of return last year. And now let's look at all the farms that had rates of returns greater than 5%. So these are farms that we hear, okay, 2017 was just the third bad year in a row. That group of farms is saying what about 2017? Wasn't that bad a year. And then let's look at here versus here. So let's put a line in here somewhere around 82, 84% heifers to cows. You see this group of farms here, and then you see this group of farms here. We have this guy way up here. Lots of heifers, really high rates of returns. We take him out. Now we have that group here, and then we have this group here. Okay, what are these farms doing? Raising less heifers, less investment in facilities, less operating costs to do it, getting pretty good performance. All right, what are these group doing here? Realizing, okay, none of these got much above 8% other than this one person up here. Where here we had a number of them push up here. So what are they doing? How are they capturing the value of these extra animals? And then if we break it down a little bit more, once we start getting up to about 104, 105%, now all of a sudden nobody was over 5% rate of return. And as the percents keep coming up, then they started falling down even more. To our high farm here at 130% heifers to cows. So while there's no trend when we look at all the data, looking at different aspects, it's like, okay, what are these farms doing? Okay, how do we dig into that more? What questions do we want to ask? And that's what's fun about where I spend most of my time on farms is like, okay, who is this? I can go look it up. And all right, I can go call them up on the phone and say, all right, let's ask some more questions. What's happening there? So the financial impact. Costs do go up, very little relationship. How come? What is the herd doing? So we're talking about the replacement program, but what is the herd doing? Is the herd growing or is the herd stable? Is the herd turning over very fast? Is the herd turning over very slow? What's the quality of the heifer coming through the system? We'll talk about that some more. That's a huge challenge, a huge issue. We're making progress, but it's still a big challenge issue, maybe opportunities for some farms. And then what's the cost to raise the heifer? That is a very interesting concept too, very interesting question as we look at things. Roadside test here. You know, you do a roadside test of your neighbor's corn to see how it looks. You don't walk into the field, you just do what? Drive by it, see what it looks like. So, cost to raise heifers. If your heifer's on a trailer 9 times before she calves, your cost to raise that heifer is probably what? Pretty high. Now, the animal knows how to get on off a trailer, but in terms of our cost, that's the highest I've found so far in any of the farms that we've used for projects or stuff, is it was on a trailer 9 times before it calved. What's cost to raise? And then we can say, what are the animal values doing? So right today, what are heifer prices doing? If you're going to sell a heifer, I don't care if it's at 1 month old, 1 day old, 18 months old. Don't try to sell a 30-month-old heifer. Where are heifer prices right now? They're low. So I've been doing these things here for quite a few years here. I know there's a few in here who have been doing it a lot longer than me. But looking at this heifer, how many years have heifer prices probably been equal to or greater than the cost to raise them? Out of the last 25 or 30 years. Maybe 4 or 5 years. Back 4, 5, 6 years ago when heifer prices got up to where? 21, 22s, okay. But most years, you can buy springers for what? Equal to or lower costs than what? Again, a huge range. Can't use that as a blanket statement. But we got it. What are the animal values doing? Right now, animal values aren't worth much. So now, if any excess animals we sell, we're probably selling them at even what? Potentially a greater loss, without, again, digging into knowing your numbers. First question, how many heifers should we be being raised? So that's where we always start. That's my starting point. There's no set answer, no set number for every farm. We got to ask questions again. How many needed to maintain herd size where I start? How many can be raised in the system becomes the second part. How do they compare? And then when they don't match up, what do? We're either raising too many or we're raising too few. What's our strategy to become at that point? How many heifers are needed? Maintain herd size over the next year or two. That's my starting point. Now, if you're growing, you can say, well, we're going to raise every heifer calf because we're growing. But if I look at my farms that are in a continued growth mode, do the heifers ever catch up to the cows? They tend to be at a lower percent heifer to cows anyway because they're always growing. So somebody is calling my phone in the room. Good thing I turned it off. Need 3 pieces of information. Herd turnover rate. Heifer non-completion rate. Average calving age of heifers. 3 things there. We go back to Wisconsin Extension, Cornell Extension, about 35, 40 years ago. They started saying what should be the goal for the average calving age of a heifer. 22, 23, 24 months. I think back 30 years ago, they said only 24. But so in New York, I haven't looked the most recent, but I think we might be finally getting to about 25 for average. I don't know, anybody know what it might be in Wisconsin, 25, 26? I don't think we're at 24 yet, so anybody animal scientists in here? You've been working on it for 40 years, you make about 1 month progress every 10 years. That's pretty good progress. So, but it's what is that average calving age? What's the heifer non-completion rate? Do you know that for your farms? Easy test. Look at all the animals that calved last month. They all have, most farms, they all have ear tags, and the numbers were put in sequence. It's all right, we calved in 50 heifers. What was the earliest ear tag, the highest ear tag? All right, where's the missing ear tags? Where are they? Have they not calved yet? Okay, or did they disappear somewhere in the system? What's that number look like? What percent started and didn't finish? Yep. So you can, with those 3 things, you can do the math. We're going to have a table. So here's just 1,000 cows, or you can say it's 100 cows. I use an 8% non-completion rate. We got cow turnover, the cow call rates, herd call rates, 21% to 45. Here's calving age, 21 to 28. And we can see how the different average number of heifers of all ages running around the farm changes. So if I just pick 24-month calving age and say, all right, what's the call rate? What's my management strategies of my farm results in what type of call rate? So say it's 33%, well then, all right, I need 689 heifers. But if my calving age is older, now all of a sudden I need 803. Or I need 603. We can change that number quite a bit. What's the calving age? What does the dairy herd need to maintain that herd size number? Because you see down here, we can actually get well over that. We need 100% heifers of cows to maintain herd size if we have high turnover and that we calve them in at an older age. And then you can say, boy, I'm very low turnover and I calve them really young. Now I can be below 50% and I can still maintain herd size. Does that impact the balance sheet? And does that impact operating costs? Questions? Yes, sir. So a bunch of different people, but the snapshot approach I like is just using that 1 month segment saying, okay, these are the heifers that calved in. The earliest ear tag was 1,222. The oldest one was here. There's my begin points. So then most likely every one of those ear tags started the system. All right. Yep, maternity, they started the system. Some people debate when do they start the system, when they hit the ground or when a day old, but essentially. Oh, so where our non-completion rate's probably running to probably 7 to 8s would be the average. The good farms are going to be 5s, 6s, and then we start debating in. They're doing really well keeping them all, but the question becomes what? Should they? And so what do you think the train wrecks we've seen are? Anybody want to venture? I guess for non-completion rates. Yeah, over 20. Yep. Over 15% don't make it through the wean pen. They don't make it through the first 3 months. That's been our worst. Like, okay, 15% of them just don't make it to 3 months old. And then you lose your ones at breeding age, and then, I mean, what heifers try to do 4 things usually. They eat, they sleep, they make manure, they try to wreck the place, 5 things, and they may try to figure out how to kill themselves by being stupid sometimes. But usually you got at least the first 4. They wreck the place, eat, sleep, make manure. So how you put the 8% in there. What impact does the non-completion rate in here? It does have an impact. So if I pick that 24-month calving age, I'm just running the 33% herd rate here. We can change 20, 25 heifers of total inventory of all ages based on going from 6 to 12%. But I mean, if we have 15% non-completion rate, now we can start having some challenges just in terms of, and what's the bigger concern with that non-completion rate? One, you don't have the animals. What's the bigger concern? What? Yeah, are the ones that you make it through the system, are they going to be able to be a quality animal? And 2 is, you put money in all those animals that didn't make the system. Who pays for that? You do, somehow. Yep. Second question, how many heifers can we actually raise in our system? And again, in the Northeast, it's pretty much we do everything. We have facilities. We don't necessarily use a lot of custom growers. Some farms do. Maybe there's more need for that, but how much space is there for the heifers? What's the quality? What's the cost to raise them? We don't have an unlimited budget to raise the heifer. So we need to know what the costs are. So what's the mission of the replacement enterprise? This is what we lay out. This is like the challenge of dairy producers, what our mission is. Raise the highest quality heifer who will maximize profits once she enters the lactating herd. We got 2 key concepts in that first sentence, don't we? Quality, and it actually has to do what? Enter the herd. If it don't enter the herd. Second section here, quality heifer. No limitations that hinder her ability to produce under that farm's management system. And we'll talk about that some more. And then now we'll finally bring in costs at the lowest possible cost. We're not raising beef animals, so it might not be the lowest cost, period. It's just lowest possible cost while we're getting the quality that we want, the goals that we want. So our starting point is the quality. That is our focus area. Some of the key things we asked, some of the research that's been done, more by the animal science people, growth versus milk production after calving. All right, rotational grazing herd, seasonal. So, all right, the calves are all born in March, April, so they all need to calve when? March, April, 2 years later, 24-month calving age, well, they pretty poor growth rates. They said we need our bigger heifers. They calved. They didn't do anything first lactation because they were still growing. They didn't make any milk. So they decided they'd calve them in at 36 months instead of 24 months so they'd be bigger. Does anybody want to venture a guess on how that worked? The animals were bigger. That was the only thing they accomplished. So then they went back to 24 months and tried to figure out how to get them grow better. But again, that's where having the financial data, analyzing the things, looking at the things. Calving problems. Are they too heavy? Are they too light? That lead to the calving issues. Overall conditions of the animals. Mastitis, feet and legs, injury. When they enter the herd. What are those things? We'll talk about some of the goals there for some of those. Prior treatments start coming into play. Do we even know what the treatments are? Where's the records? So we can look at those things. What's her ability to express her genetic ability once she enters the herd? So if we believe the work the genetics people do, the biology, research, growth people do, is like they can have all the genetic potential in the world, but if we hinder them at some point in their life, will they be able to express it? I mean, at least I keep getting told, no, we can do things to them that they won't be able to express their genetic potential anymore. What are we doing there? So Snapshot, some of the things at least to start asking questions about. We can debate on whether the goals are high enough, too high. But first calf heifers. So this is when they enter the herd. How many are treated? At what point in their stage? Because if they're being treated in the first 24 hours, that's probably coming from where? The heifer program. DOAs. Are we having too high DOAs? Is that the frame issue again and the weight issue? What is our milk production doing for those first lactation animals? What's the lactation curve look like for that first lactation versus the older lactation animals in your herd? Are they doing what they should be doing? What's our first calf cull rate? That first lactation cull rate, 60 days in milk. You guys are usually pretty good. How do you maximize losses associated with raising a heifer? When do you want her to die? After she calves. And then if we really want to maximize it, it's a bull calf, and the bull calf also did what? Died, and then you treated her, so you couldn't even sell her. So then you had to pay to have her picked up or composted, or now we've maximized the loss. That's a key number. Where is that in your herd? Because if it gets too high, what opportunity, why, what's occurring, what's happening in there? First calf treated, we talked about that. Retention, what percent make it to second lactation? Most of our dairy herds we look at, what animals are the highest producing cows in your herd? Are they the first lactation animals? Not usually. What are they? Third lactation and greater? Second lactation's getting there. Third lactation and greater is the highest. Well, if we're going to have the animals really express their genetic potential, they mean they have to be in the herd till when? Till they can do it. So how many can make it? We get them bred, we get them dried off, we get them back into the herd. So we don't have variation in here, but that's the other key part. What's the variation in your herd? So you have some animals doing very well, but do we have tail enders that get too big, too high? Quantifying quality. Some of the different research projects, Dr. Van Amberg helped pull these out for me. Research he's done, other people have done. Boy, for that rate of gain increase, early in lactation, prior to weaning, the 800 to 1,500 pounds of milk, first lactation, subsequent lactations, shown up in a couple different projects. Every month, decreasing calving age. So with herds that are still on the higher side for calving age, boy, we get that down. We extend productive life in the herd. Decrease antibiotic treatment. We can just treat that animal one time less. So not saying it's the antibiotic that's the issue, it's that the animal was sick enough that we needed to do what? Treat it. So it's like, so we've got to be important there. It's not the fact that it's whatever antibiotic. No, it was the animal was such that it needed to be treated. More milk production. Reducing mastitis at calving. That first 24 or 2 days, 48 hours of calving. Animals that did not have mastitis versus animals that did have mastitis, the 1,100 pounds difference in milk production that first lactation. What percent of first lactation heifers should have mastitis in the first month? Or the first week? What do you think the goal should be? It should be what? 0. What do you think the highest we've seen for that? In some of our case project analysis with the students. Highest one I've been in is 15%. 15% of the heifers had mastitis in the first month of their lactation. Was that an issue in the dairy herd? No, the issue was where? back in the heifer program. And that was expensive. Questions on this? That's good because Mike's not here. Quality of the replacements is the number one priority. If the quality is not there, the costs are really never low enough, is what we find. That, okay, boy, yeah, maybe it's not as good as we like, but it's lower cost. Well, it's costing us more because we don't have the quality animal in the herd. The dairy replacements on the farm usually get what? At least in the Northeast, in New York, they get the poorest feed, the rained-on feed, the feed on the edges of the bunks, the feed we don't want to feed to the dairy cows. All right, it's good heifer feed. They get the old facility, the oldest facilities. It's very interesting, again, looking at the heifers. You can tell a lot just by what the farmers call the different facilities. Because most of them name them things. So that's the dungeon. That's the death pit. That tells us stuff without even doing anything. The smallest facilities, we just overcrowd them. You mean you can't have 2 calves to a hutch? We overcrowd. What may those issues be? What are those challenges? Did everybody get that? Sorry. How much space? So now this becomes more of a subjective. What are you guys seeing? What's it look like? How many heifers fit the system? What are the quality issues on your farm for overcrowding? Growth rates, treatment rates, increased variation among heifers. Another one of our case projects on a farm. Heifers calving within 1 week of each other, being 400 pounds difference in weight after calving, entering the herd. Is that a big variation? And they were relatively consistent mature animal size. Big variation, very overcrowded. The calves that fell behind in the first week or 2 of life, did they ever catch up? They just kept doing what? Falling behind. All right, how'd those animals do in first lactation? What percent of those animals made second lactation and greater? What impact does the overcrowding have? What does it have on cost? Well, if we overcrowd them, we don't have to build any more what? Barns. No more sheds. The feeder's going there anywhere. So it just has to carry more feed. So it can impact costs. What's it do to quality? So then we bring in the costs. So this is those same 17 farms back in 2012. We can look at numbers. This is on the website. The whole paper is for those that are interested in the numbers. And again, Wisconsin has their projects. They have one more recent than this. So like in our case, labor's up quite a bit right now compared to back then. But you can see feed's biggest, labor second. Interest on daily investments down here in third. We're investing money every day in those heifers. Non-performance expense. These particular herds, 3.8% of our cost to raise the heifers was all the money tied with heifers that didn't do what? Finish the system. So again, this is getting the data from the farms. Here's a little more descriptives of the farms. So here's the non-completion rate. The average in that particular year is 10.6. There was the high, 17.7. The low was 4.2. And there's the rates of gain. So just something. But again, this whole paper is on the ProDairy website. So you can find that. So there's kind of a cost. But then if we go back here, look at this range. 266 to 340. Does that start impacting what the earnings of the farm might be? And what we do with those excess animals? So the farm that's at 110% heifers to cows, if their costs are 340, are they ever going to sell those animals or any of those animals that are ever going to make them any money? Probably not. The farm that's over 100%, if their costs are down here, do they have a high likelihood at least being closer to break even to maybe making a little money? Realizing these costs does have interest, this has profit built into it already. So you'd have, if you want to get your cash costs, you have to back that out. So that range is important. And why do we have that range? And that can be a whole separate presentation. So the direct costs, what we call the direct costs, these are things we're more writing checks for. $2.61 heifer per day, range from $2.21 to $2.95. So over 70-cent variation in what we're writing checks for. That loading heifers 9 times on a trailer does what to labor costs? Pushes them up. What's it do to machinery costs? Pushes them up. Facility locations. Size of facilities. If you walk onto the farm and the employees have shirts with pockets on them sewn upside down so you can slip the shovel handle in to lean on it, that means they're probably doing too much shovel work. So if we want to increase costs with heifers, have a lot of hand labor where we have to do stuff scraping by what? Hand, or shoveling by hand. 87% of the cost to raise a heifer. The indirect costs, depreciation, there's the interest on investment, the returns, the insurance, 39 cents. So that's paying for the sheds, that's paying for the buildings. Range, 30 to 59 cents. So we do have a range there, but how big is that range? Big, but it's a lot smaller than the variable side. But we still have a range there. And what was driving this, a lot of the range is those 17 farms, which ones had built dedicated new heifer facilities versus they were using what? The 40-year-old dairy complex that they had walked away from. So that was the big driver in there. Because as soon as you build a new heifer complex, all of a sudden your ownership costs do what? Go up. Versus using the old dairy complex. But maybe by doing that, we achieved what up here? The lower operating costs. So what, still trying to say how many fits my heifer system, what's the quality, what's the impact of overcrowding, synergies we have to bring in here. What are the cost synergies on the farm? If we got rid of the heifers, what costs would really go away, or we're still going to have those costs? And again, no set answer. It's thinking about it on your farm. It's asking questions. I'll give kind of 2 examples. So I had 2 dairies that were using custom growers, 100% wet calves on up. For 2 different reasons, both of them were all the heifers were coming back on farm, and they were going to have to build complexes to raise the heifers. Farm A brought all the heifers back, built the complexes, so depreciation's up, investment's up, but labor efficiency stayed the same. Really no changes in any labor costs. No real changes in machinery costs. Vet was up a little, breeding was up a little, milk replacer was up a little, those things. But it was like, okay, they're like, we had the mixer wagon, we had the feeder, we had all the herds people, and we weren't doing a good job utilizing them on what? Our dairy. So by bringing all the heifers home, we were able to do what? Better job utilizing all those resources, taking care of all those animals. So on that farm, they actually lowered their costs. Custom heifer bill went down. Other costs went up, but not that much. Farm B, after the fact, they had done a really good job. All their resources were 100% utilized taking care of cows. So as soon as they brought the heifers back, well, okay, there went the building costs, but also what did labor do? Went up. Labor efficiency did what? Went down. What did machinery costs do? Machinery investment went up. They had to buy more equipment, more machinery, because they didn't have excess capacity. And so on that particular farm, okay, wasn't a lot of gain short term, and on a cash flow basis, they actually went backwards a little bit, paying the loans off for the barns for bringing the heifers home, because they had done a good job utilizing the resources. So, but that synergies at least has to be thought about, talked about, because that 261 might not all be saved by changing the number of heifers, because you might still pay for some of those, whether you're doing it all or not. And then details, is there some segment of the heifer program that's too expensive? So it's not just the cost of the whole heifers, you can actually do it by group. Because some of the times when we analyze them, it's like they're really, really good at 5 out of the 6 areas of their heifer program. One area is too expensive. We either got to fix it or stop doing it or do something else. So, and then we talked about we don't have an unlimited budget. There's plenty of diminishing returns. All right, there's just not enough benefit to quality anymore to pay for that bill. They're just too expensive, period. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask a question earlier, but I assumed we'd get to that point at some point. I had the good pleasure a month ago to ride in the semi for 4 hours with a 10,000-cow dairyman in Michigan. Visited about lots of things, and incidentally, he was milking 120 cows in
So and that's why I call that a strategic question, because at least if I pick July of 2018 and said if the milk price, heifer prices, feed prices, mud conditions in July in New York in July were what is going to be our new normal the next 5 years, how much dairy industry would there be in New York? Anybody want to venture a guess? We'd all be with Jerry in Florida. There would be none. But it's looking at it the long term to say, okay, right now, this month, you're right, it's, okay, what's over the 5 years, where's things look, and then back to that quality issue, and then the genetic issue, and some of those things, and it would be, and that particular dairy, if he buys them all, we can't answer it, but some of our other dairies that grow their own and buy, they code them, and they can go back and look at them. Okay, what is that quality difference that we're using out second, third lactation to say, okay, is there a value of $100 a head, $2 a head? We can debate that whole nother presentation in terms of having more control of the system instead of just buying whatever we can buy versus can we buy quality. But yeah, right now it would be like, I'm going to run my facilities because if they stand empty, I still got what costs. But am I going to raise any extra? And am I going to raise them in the very expensive part if I got a very expensive? No, I might be better off not doing that and buying my restware.
So just a comment,
Yep.
he's not raised the heifer in any of those quantities.
Yep.
He went through the cycle,
Yep.
he's getting 90 pounds of milk.
Yep.
So he doesn't miss the genetics, but he focuses all his energy on other things.
Yep.
But much like you, he challenged a bunch of paradigms for me that I'm used to. That's what you're doing today, is you're challenging our paradigms.
So that's where that's the strategic question there. Should we be raising any? And on some of those farms, the answer is what? No. And we've had dairies in New York that they're not raising any heifers. And they sold them all, depopulated, walked away, said we're spending too much, and quality is what? Bad. And it's like, well, if you're spending a lot and you have no quality, yep. So we don't have that unlimited budget. So now management strategies. All right, we have more heifers, need more heifers than we have capacity for. Now, when we built our dairy, we had a 1,200 cow dairy, and we sized our heifer complex for the 1,200 cows. Now we got 3,000 cows, and the heifer complex is still sized for what? Or we had a 50 cow dairy, and we had the heifer system for a 50 cow dairy, and now we're 150, and the heifer system still what? Pick our poison. It's like, well, okay, what do we do? What's been the common traditional answer in that case? Just overcrowd them. Stick them wherever. Tie them up. Put them wherever. We bring in those concerns. When do we usually know we have a quality issue with the heifer program? When was that, Jim? 3 years later. It's after the fact. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah, so when we have farms where we're out there and they're like, we are not getting increases in milk production. We're making the same, if not less, milk per cow now than we were 3 and 4 years ago. We got better repro, we got better forages, we got shredlage. We don't got BST anymore, but we got rumensin, we're doing BMR, we're doing whatever technology you want to use. We're making less milk. How come? They start digging into things. It's like, boy, our first lactation animals are doing what now compared to where they were 4 years ago? Now it's like, well, wait a minute. Do we have some issue there? What's the variation we've seen in startup milks on heifers on farms? Take the 50 highest, 50 lowest on larger dairies. On kind of like the average of the 2 highest test periods. 35. Lowest 50, top 50. 35 pounds difference in variation. Is there money to be made by trying to take those bottom 50 and doing what with them? Yeah. How many in here have ever had interns on your farm? College students, they're good for doing lots of projects. So one dairy said, all right, they did that. 50 highest, 50 lowest. The 50 lowest said, let's go find out what we can about them. Intern, there's all the calendars, there's all the note cards, there's all the handwritten records. Nothing was in a computer. Go flipping through them all. What can you find out? Those 50 heifers over their life. 48 out of the 50 had been treated more than once for something. Not a research project, let's not quote that as a research thing, but it was just like, okay, Is there some issue? Why were they treated? Where was it? What was leading it on that farm? What can we look into that? Do we make additional investments? But now, is that the best use of limited resources? Do we invest in the heifers, or do we invest in what? Cows or other efficiency things or other things. So what's the best use of limited resources? I doubt any of us in here are farming with money. They're fun to work with. I think did everybody see, I think CBS or CNN did a thing about Arethusa Dairy? And the family that owns Arethusa, some of you might know, I'm at the Expo. I think you guys probably know Arethusa Dairy, but they're like, yeah, we've been kind of insulated from the other issues the last 20 years that the dairy industry's gone to, because the cows weren't necessarily expected to support it in the beginning. Special use limited resources, how is the cost to raise impacted? Do we utilize those custom replacement services? Do we buy them and not raise them? Do we change the dairy herd? Say, can we change the management practices in the dairy herd that leads to less animals being required? Now, is it a good management practice to say we will only have I'll pick a number, 30% cull rate for the year? Is that a good management approach? Because cull rate's the end result of all our activities. It's kind of hard to start off saying it will be 30%, because then you might end up keeping cows that you probably should have done what? Cull them. So it's the result of management. It's not so we have to be very, very careful about that cull rate number, but can we change management practices that end up with less required animals? What do we have more than we need? And that's more of the question here, and that's more of what our farms are. What do we do with all these animals? We are doing better with our management strategies. So we don't have cows culling themselves as frequently. And we're putting cows on the truck that are still really good cows and really profitable, productive cows. Okay, do we want to do that? So do we raise only the number needed and leaving the space empty? Is it bad not to use a barn? What do you think? Yes. So if you're in New York and you ask New York farms, what's my favorite barn remodeling tool for old facilities, they'll probably tell you what? Yeah, D9. I don't even want a small one. I want to be quick about it. That just because we have a barn doesn't mean we need to do what? We need to use it. What's the cost? What's that mean? What's it look like? We run at capacity with the own numbers, but then what do we do with them? How do we capture that value? Are we growing fast enough to capture them there? How are we going to sell them? Are we going to sell them as springers, 14 days in the milk? Are we going to sell them as some other age? And then what's the prices right now? Most of those options we're probably doing what? Losing money, even if we say we have lots of synergies and our actual cash costs are a lot smaller, we probably still are pushing the envelope a little bit right now. Run at capacity with custom raised heifers. Well, I got the system. I don't need it for my own. Is there somebody else that their system's not big enough? They have opportunities. Well, joint venture, collaborations. Is there economies of scale associated with raising heifers? What do we think? Yeah, we're not sure where the limit is on it. It's very big range. The economies of scale in terms of what the impact and cost can be, the efficiency can be, the investments can be. But brings in the risk, biosecurity, and right today, we get paid. If you sell feed, if you do custom chopping, you do custom heifer raising, the last thing you want to be is what? A banker. Any banker in the room? The last thing you want to be is the banker, because your diversification is not working if you're not getting paid. But some of the challenges there, some of the questions we ask. So in this case, right now, with farms making decisions, we might be going where? Here. Some farms are doing this one. Some of the farms that think their costs are really good, really tight, are still here, and then trying to market the animals and trying to minimize the loss they're taking right now. But we had that strategic question saying, okay, what's this mean going ahead longer term? So that value, how do we get them out? Is it higher turnover? of the herd. That's what some farms do. All right, so a couple of our dairies, we can predict their cull rate next year pretty closely. It's pretty much based on what? How many heifers are going to calve next year? That's how many heifers calves, that's going to be cull rate. Well, we have enough heifers to have a 45% cull rate. So they've done this 3+ years in a row. What's the average age of the herd? Because what cows are they culling? The older cows. Well, when you have a 45% cull rate for 2-3 years in a row, an older cow is how old? They're in what lactation? Second, end of the second. So you go on that herd now and say, well, let's pull up third lactation and greater performance on the herd. What's the answer? Yeah, not enough to do anything. What do you think happened to milk production on that farm? Average milk per cow. It went down. Animals weren't staying around long enough. And they weren't necessarily broken. It was just, we got all these heifers and they're my better genetics. That's okay, but are they staying in the herd long enough? Do we sell them as springers, sell them as early lactation? We hit on some of those. The last part here, I'm not sure how I'm doing on time. Not too bad. Is let's treat this system as its own business. We have more and more dairies doing that now. The heifers is its own business. They're tired of not knowing their cost. So this little spreadsheet, again, you can get off the ProDairy website. It's not a fancy program model. It's just an Excel. But it helps explain, look at things, at least helps conceptualize a few things. And you can put in numbers. And we can change all the variables and say what are sold and died for different things. And we put in performance goals. What if I can change this in the heifer program? What may it mean? And stuff. And then it does a lot of output. A key number is how many heifers do we need to maintain herd size? Because there's inventory costs associated with that. Not just ownership, not just operating costs, there's inventory costs. But down here in the yellow, and this graph will show it a little better. So initially when we put this kind of my example farm in, the heifer system was a negative business. We had a negative rate of return. And it was a poor heifer business. I mean, we had higher calving age and poor non-completion rate and cost issues. So it most likely was what? A bad business if it was run as a separate business with our internal transfers. And we can change it. And we could get better. And what if we only had enough barns for what we needed? What if we were still going to run all our barns even though we still had them, we still had to pay for them, we just weren't using them? What if we sold excess animals? This case, it's worst case because what's the heifer prices? We're selling them for not much money. Now, if we bring it back to what the overall dairy did, okay, the dairy is running here in that 4.5%, and we could bounce around, but these combined changes, okay, we had ability to maybe move the dairy rate of returns 1-2% up. But what's the heifer program doing? And how good the heifer program's doing, and how many heifers are needed by that herd to maintain performance. And again, and then I can change this graph to make lots of different things, but it's like, okay, what's it look like? What if we put these numbers in here? What if we change this? What if we change that? Not going to say it's the perfect model, but what I've come up with so far to help just to conceptualize what's occurring on farms, and as farms make changes, what things end up looking like, and well, how come, why? This helps, at least been what I've been using to help explain it. So summary, are you raising the right number? There is no universal answer. We go back to that very first graph on those earnings, very little relationship to the earnings, but some farms do very, very good, and the highest profit farms tend to be on lower heifers, but there's some certainly in the modest profit size with higher heifers. We get too many heifers, it does decrease earnings, but there's no universal answer. They do impact operating costs. The quality is the key. We dig down more into, well, those farms that have all those heifers, if they don't have a quality heifer, doesn't matter. I mean, that's why they got to raise them all, because if you lose 10% of them in the first 60 days in milk, you better have a lot of what? Heifers coming into the system. How do we recapture that cost? How do we recapture that investment in the heifers if we want to raise any extra? Without getting in that strategic question, should my farm be raising heifers, period? Because back to the gentleman's point there about the heifers, right today it's like, well, all these people are selling heifers at a loss, so it'd be my gain to do what? Buy them, but okay, if everybody adapted that model, then the value of the heifer calf would go what? Would have to come back up to the cost to raise them, because then otherwise people won't raise them. But short term, right now, it makes a lot of sense. So that farm, 70 to the 80, maybe up into that almost 85%, may generate higher earnings over time. As long as we're getting the quality animals, maintaining the herd size. Can we go lower than that? Some farms are. We get higher, we get in the 90s, the 100s, the 110s. Now it's like, okay, well, how was this really supporting generating earnings on the farm? Questions? Other comments? We got here 5-6 minutes here. Yes, sir.
Here in Wisconsin, we're getting a lot of our larger commercial breeding the bottom 30% of genetic to beef bulls. Comment on that. They argue very quickly that $170 to $200 more for that calf when it's born.
Yeah, so we're having that happen in New York. So if we have so I was talking about raising heifers. If we have excess heifers and we're not going to raise them, what do we do? Well, at least in New York, I think it's a genetic disposition is you can't sell a heifer off the farm. But if it's a beef animal, then we can do what? Sell it. So, all right, the only way we're going to sell it is breed so many to beef. So then, okay, do we breed to beef? Because we know we're going to have excess sell anyway. We're not going to, and the least painful economic-wise to sell them right now is when? Day old, week old, let's not raise them. I think that's pretty solid right in today's days. So then it's like, well, if it's bred to beef, can I get a higher price? In New York right now, it seems like the price differentials all coming about, they're all worth nothing. Or we don't seem, at least some of the New York dairymen are telling me, but might not be as big. But yeah, if we get $50 more, $100 more, that's gravy on top. But the more important thing is we're doing what, from my perspective? We're raising less heifers. We're just selling them. The cow needs to be bred. The cow needs to cycle. It needs to re-enter the herd. What do we do with that extra animal? How do we get the most value out of them? And that is certainly one strategy. No, good point. Any other questions? So for the producers in the room, next time Wisconsin does their project here, you need to do what? Volunteer to do it. Look at your numbers, because if you're not looking at them yet, you need to be looking at them. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the expo. Thank you, sir.
A lot of things to think about. What's your website for the ProDairy? Is it prodairy.com?
Yep. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's right there. It's just prodairy.cals.cornell.
Is it .cows? Or?
Yep. .cals.cornell.edu. Yep. So if you do ProDairy on Google, usually it comes up. I think so.
I visited you 2 years ago with a group from Andrew. Andrew was also.
Oh, from